everyone, I'm Aanchal Sharma, your educator. Today we are going to discuss the syllabus of UGC NET exam, that is for your English literature. So we all know that there are two exams that are there and it is conducted simultaneously. There is paper 1 and there is paper 2. So paper 1 is a general paper that is given by everyone. Right? It has 50 questions, 2 marks each. And then there comes the second paper that is pertaining to the different subjects that you have. So you can have commerce, you can have eco, or you can have English literature. So today we are going to discuss the syllabus of English literature. Let us see what all are the different units that UGC has given to us. So this is the NET syllabus that they have given. The code is number 30. The subject is English, as you can see. So there are about 10 units. The 10 units are also there in your paper 1, as we have already discussed, and rigorously we have taken classes for that. But now let us discuss about English literature. So there are 10 units, as you can see. The first is drama, then it's poetry, then fiction and short story. So here basically comes the novel also, the novels. Then there is the non-fictional prose. Then there is a note that we'll be reading in a while. Now let us see the next unit, that is the fifth, is ELT, or you can call it as the language. There are basic concepts related to it, theories, and the pedagogy of this language as well. So here we basically study how English is in use now. Then there is the unit called as cultural studies. Then there is literary criticism. Then there is literary theory post-World War. Now don't get confused with this word post-World War, because there are other contemporary and conventional theories also. So that is related to this domain and is asked in this domain, right? So don't get confused with this word. You can say that is written here, that is the post-World War. So not only the theories that is related to post-World War is asked, but the other theories also. So this means that they don't only ask you about eco-criticism, eco-feminism or other theories, but they ask you about the conventional theories also. Then the last unit is the research methods and the materials in English, right? So now this research methods is somewhat similar to what we also study in our paper 1, that is the research aptitude. But yes, here most of all, because it is an English literature paper, they're going to ask you about the qualitative research steps, right? So they'll focus more on ethnographic studies, and all these kinds of studies are basically asked, because what is the core paper here? This is English literature. Now, how do you study and how do you decode the pattern? So we all know that there are 10 units, and what is the basic fault that the students do? They actually give equal time to all the units. They think that all the units are equal, right? But that is the biggest blunder that you can do. A very smart strategical study is required to clear the paper in one go, and this is what I'll be helping you in. So we all know that this is the note that you should read. So these are the first 4 units, and the first 4 units must also be tested through comprehension passages to assess your critical reading. There is the critical thinking and the writing skills that they assess here. This means that they are also going to ask a lot of different questions from these 4 units, and these can be your you can say the passage is given and RTCs can be asked from this kind of units, right? So this means that passage would be given. It can be poetry also, or it can be a passage that is basically from your fiction or from a poetry section, right? So we all know that say Samuel Beckett. So they keep on asking questions from Samuel Beckett, that is Waiting for Godot. So this is a text that you just cannot leave. So they keep on giving lines from this question, and we all know that there are, there's a conversation between Vladimir and Estrogen, and they keep on asking questions related to this. So they'll ask you questions related to different novels. There would be passage, there can be poetry as well. Now a lot of students get confused why and how they should break down all of these 4 units. Now I'll be explaining you in the video in the coming sessions also how to study about all of these topics, but in this video I'll tell you how to chart out the things, right? So first of all, we'll look at the 4 units, and then the other remaining units I will be discussing on that, right? So this basically you can say that maximum amount of questions are asked from these 4 units, right? So till Now, the trend is that about 60% of your paper is asked from these 4 units only. So, there is drama, there is poetry, there is fiction and short stories, and there is the non-fictional prose. Now, what is the changing trend? Now, they are asking a lot of questions from cultural studies and literary criticism and the theory as well. So I'm not saying that these units are not important, but about 60% of the paper is covered by these 4 units, right? So these 4 units, now you don't have to divide these 4 units in, you don't have to study drama first, then poetry first, then fiction or short stories, or then the non-fictional prose. What you have to do is the smart study here. You are going to study age-wise here, right? You're going to study, you can divide this section into different parts. Now, how can you divide this section? You can divide it into English literature. This is a British literature section, or it can be Indian literature section, it can be Canadian literature, it can be French literature. So you can break down, it can be European literature. So you can break down this whole chunk into smaller sections, and then you can subdivide the sections. So if you keep on subdividing the sections and studying according to the ages and the writers, then the approach would be much better than, pertaining it and looking all of these things together. Right. So say you are studying drama at the first go. So you will take a writer, and of course that writer, you are not going to study drama related to that writer only. Say you have taken Pope. So we all know that Pope or Dryden, these are the very, very important writers that you cannot leave. They are from British literature. Now what you are doing, of course, you are studying British literature first. So this is the first chunk that you have decided. Then in that chunk, there is writer that you are going age-wise. So we all know that there is Elizabethan age, there is Victorian age. And in my classes, we are going to segregate the things in this manner only. We are going to study age-wise in a chronological order so that you don't jumble everything up. Then what will happen? So there is Dryden or Pope that you have taken. So when you are studying Pope, what you will do? So we know Alexander Pope has written some dramas, some poetry, and written, he must have written some of the letters that are important. So all of these things should be done together. So whenever you think about one writer, one age, everything should be directly in your mind, right? So this is how you should study. You should not study drama once and then poetry once, right? But yes, you can decode the things properly, right? Because you know that poetry is important. From a very long period of time, I have been seeing that UGC is asking poetries now, and it is Philip Larkin. This is their favorite, poet, and they keep on asking poetry from Philip Larkin. So you get to know the heck of the exam once you keep on solving the questions, and the past year question papers actually play a very important role in this kind of study, right? So you know that Philip Larkin is very important. They ask questions from it, or you know that in your play, you know that Shakespeare becomes the most important dramatist. So you have to study Marlowe or Shakespeare. So you know that this time also in shift 1, they ask you, there were some questions or there were some statements or the lines that were given from the plays of Shakespeare, and you had to match it. So what you have to do, you have to study all of these things together, right? So this is the smart work that I'm asking you to do. Then we have the language. So now there are questions asked from this unit also. So your English in India and your language section. These are the 2 sections from where you will see at least 3 or 4 questions. They definitely ask from this because it is an important unit. You can also add your research methodology in this section, right? So they ask questions from this. Nowadays, we see that there is a boom of questions that are asked from your cultural studies, literary criticism, and theory. But why is this section less easy, you can say easy as compared to the other section? Because this section is very vast, right? You need about 30 days to consolidate your notes and then a month to revise all these things. That is why I say that these 4 units are more important as compared to these units, because you can actually cover English in India in one go, right? In my classes, we can study it a maximum in 2 classes. And then there is ELT. So in ELT, you will be studying different theories. You will be studying Stephen Crashaw. You will be studying Lev Zawadzki, and you will be studying what is Suggestopedia. So all of these things, and it is very easy. You just need to, just read all these things once and you will be done. But they do ask questions from this. So your theories and pedagogy is a section which they are asking questions from. So Pidgin, Creole, and all of these things, what are registers? These are repeated questions that they are asking. If you have one good source to study these things from, then your life is sorted here. But you need to do in-depth study from these 4 units, right? Especially British literature. Some of the students also divide this section in 2 parts, that is British and non-British, right? That is also a good approach, but what I believe should be, what should be done, you should also divide it further ages-wise, right? So according to the ages. Then you have literary criticism. So we have discussed cultural studies, and we know that cultural studies they are going to ask you some of the theories that are typical to cultural studies. They are going to ask you questions from that, right? So they're going to ask you about the CCCS, they're going to ask you about Stuart Hall, they're going to ask you about Richard Hogarth, Marshall McLuhan, and the books, and of course the the year of the publication becomes very important now. So you have to study the decode the pattern of how the exam is conducted, how the questions are asked, how the questions are repeated. So they don't repeat the questions as it is, but of course they will change the statements or ask it in a different manner, right? So your Center of Cultural Studies is a question that they are asking about from 3 consecutive years. I'm seeing this type of questions, right? So you cannot leave some theorist here, and it is very easy. And cultural studies is a booming topic. There are a lot of PhD holders who are studying, and decoding cultural studies now. What do you actually study in cultural studies? You study how the culture is evolving, right? You study encoding, decoding, you study about Marshall McLuhan, and this is something that is very interesting, and we'll be looking in the video further how can you study about cultural studies in greater detail. Then comes the literary criticism, as I told you. Here you have literary criticism and literary theory. So literary criticism is how you decode the text, right? It is a conventional manner how you decode what is the basic approach the different authors or the different writers have given to decode the text. What do you mean by a good text? What do you mean by a good poetry? So here you will study about Plato, here you will study about Mimesis, here you'll study about Aristotle, right? And Matthew Arnold, the touchstone method. But why is it easy? Because you just need a good book, a good source. And if you have that, then of course you will not forget all of these things. It is very typical, but they are repeatedly asking the same thing again and again. So you have to study about Horace, about Longinus, and there are few things that are important. You don't have to read the text completely. Yes, few texts have to be read completely, but still favorably this is a unit that is manageable. Then comes the literary theory. Now this is a very vast unit, but a very easy unit. By how are these questions asked? They'll ask you simple questions. They can ask you about the books, about the authors, about the date of publications, or what is basically the core statement that they have given. So they can give you statements from these questions, from these texts, and of course they can ask you which is the writer who has written all of these things. Then, as we discussed, research methods is somewhat similar to what we have done in the paper 1. Now, how you can divide drama? So you can divide drama into British drama, American, post-colonial, European, or Indian drama. Now, in the previous examination, not this time, they asked a lot of questions from Indian drama. Now, they keep on changing their trend, and definitely it was difficult for the students because we usually used to focus on British drama, but their focus changed and they asked a lot of questions from cultural studies and from the Indian drama. So here you just cannot say that कौन सी ज़्यादा important unit है becomes a very difficult thing, or from which unit they'll ask more questions from. We can just decode that this is a part from where maximum questions are asked, but you cannot say that these many questions would be asked from the particular units, right? So in paper 1, we all know that we have been saying that 5 questions are asked from each unit, though the trend is changing, but here you just cannot say that how many questions will be asked from which unit, right? I hope you're not getting confused. Let us see. Now, this is how we are going to divide, and in the classes further, the things would be clear to you. So first of all, how will you start with your British drama? Now this is the heart of your examination. You just cannot leave about, just cannot leave British literature. And I'm not saying only drama, British poetry also, right? So you have to divide all of these chunks that I told you, that is the 4 units, in all of these kind of categories. Here I am giving you the example by this, I have taken the example of drama here, right? So don't get yourself confused. So this is how we divided drama. You can also divide the other units here, right? So let us see. So there we have British drama. How do you study British drama? First of all, you study the beginning of drama. And from where do we begin the drama? We begin the drama, we study about the Greco-Roman age, we study about the Roman Empire. Then of course comes the trend of the mystery plays, the miracle plays and the morality plays. So of course, first of all, there was Homer, there was Ovid, and a lot of literature that was related to war was written, right? So what happened? And then after comes the mystery plays and the miracle plays. They started to write about Bible. The role of the church was to guide the people, right? So drama used to be performed, and of course, what is drama? Something that is performed. It was basically done inside the church. Gradually, they came outside. So the York cycle and all of these cycles that we have in our mystery morality plays and all of these plays is basically the shift that was seen. So the females never used to perform, they were not even allowed to see a lot of plays. But what was happening and what was the distinction? Of course, these were the plays that were happening inside the church, and gradually, by when you will come around the Elizabethan era and then the Victorian, you'll understand how the theatre is changing, how we came outside and started to express ourselves, how we see that the women started to play a role in the drama as well. So these are all the things that you have to look, and being a literature student, I'm sure that you are clear with all of these things. So we have the mystery plays, and here in this mystery, morality and miracle plays, we're studying about the Godhead. So basically the focus is sin and or your what goodness and all of these things is the basic focus. They are using the different metaphors for God and how the ideal person should be. So every man is a very good example of all of these plays. And after that comes the transition era. In this transition era, we started to study about interludes. So because we were studying such heavy things, and we understood that it was such heavy material that was given to the audience. So what was needed? There was a farce that was needed, some excitement, some joy was needed. So we started with interludes. They also became very important, right? Like the 4 P's. Then we will be studying about the history and the background related to the Elizabethan era. So it is important to know about the history also. There were different kings, different queens, and with those changing of the queens, changing of the lineage, changing of the thrones, we see that there are changes in the way the literature is written. So it becomes very important that while doing all of these things, you simultaneously focus the history of that era as well, because if you study history, then only you will study why these texts were written, right? So this is how simultaneously we are going to study in our classes. So we're going to study about the Elizabethan era. Then there are some early Elizabethan writers that are very important, and the university wits are, this is how they'll ask questions from. They have also asked what are the 5, which are the 5 university wits out of it. So these are the few easy questions that are sometimes asked, or they can be typical questions, like they can ask you plays of your Thomas Kyd, right? So there are some Elizabethan playwrights, as I told you. There is Marlowe, Green, Thomas Nash, Lilly, there is John Peele, there is Kyd, and there is Lodge. Now these are the university wits. They can also ask you why are they called as university wits, and from Cambridge, they have been studying from Cambridge or Oxford. So they can ask you from which school they have studied, right? So these are the few questions that they can ask. They can ask the text as well. Then there is Shakespeare, someone you cannot leave, right? They still ask about 3 questions from Shakespeare this time, or about 2 questions from Shakespeare, right? So he is very important. This time, match the following was seen. There were different different text and the different statements were given, and you had to match, right? Then comes the Jacobean and the Caroline writers, right? And these are the playwriters. So you have Johnson, you have Chapman, and then you have Fletcher, you have Webster, a very important writer, you have Middleton, Haywood, Decker, Messenger, you have Ford, you have Shirley, and then you have Marston, right? So you have different writers, and all of these writers are important when you are studying. So as I told you, there is first the beginning of the English literature, the Anglo-Saxon age, the Anglo-Norman age, then comes the Greek and the Roman period, then you have the mystery plays, miracle plays, and the morality plays, then you have the Elizabethan theatre that starts, then you have some few writers, then comes the Jacobean age, then you have the Caroline age, then comes the Restoration age. So this is at this time you see that the theatre is fastly changing. You study Dryden, a very, very important writer here. You study about Wycherley, right? You study about Wenbro. So there are few writers that you cannot leave. You have Colley-Cibber, you have Otway. Very, very important. You have William Congreve. So you all know that Way of the World is a very important text that is written by William Congreve, and statements are asked from this type of question, from this type of plays, right? So they'll give you a few statements and they'll ask you questions related to it. So this is an approach. So you have to study in depth. You cannot leave any writer. John Gray is also there. Then comes the Victorian period. In the Victorian period, you have these authors like Henry Arthur Jones, you have Arthur Penner, you have Oscar Wilde, who is very, very important. Then you have J.B. Shaw, etc. Right? Then comes the modern playwriters. In the modern playwriters, we'll be studying about, and there are many more. This is just an example I wanted to give you. There are many more writers that we'll be studying in greater detail. We'll be studying about their poetry, we'll be studying about the drama, and we'll also study about the different novels that they have written. We have Galsworthy, we have Shaw, we have Eliot, we have C.N. O'Casey, we have J.M. Synge. Then comes the postmodern playwriters. So in this postmodern writers, with these postmodern writers, you should know comes the absurd theatre, right? So you know here they all are saying there's a death of God, there is no God, there is existentialism. What are we? What is basically a human being? Why are we surviving? What is our role in this world? So we have absurd theatre, and who is basically the master of this absurd theatre? We have Samuel Beckett. We also have Harold Pinter, right? We have Tom Stoppard, we have John Osborne, and we have Noel Coward. And there are few other playwriters also. Then we have the American drama. Now, American is also very important. There are a lot of writers that are very important. Here again, I have given only examples related to drama. You can again decode the poetry section also. But in this video, we are looking at drama here. So we have Tennessee Williams, and these are the few texts of Tennessee Williams. Why I have given you these texts? Because I want you to take a screenshot and learn, because from here, yes, chronological questions are also asked. They do ask you to set all of these plays that are written by our great Tennessee Williams, and so the chronological questions are asked from here, right? So we have some very, very important plays like A Streetcar Named Desire, Glass Menagerie in 1944 being a very, very important play. They have also asked about The Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. They have also asked about The Rose Tattoo. So they'll give you the text and they'll ask you, you have to pick which of these are the texts that are written by Tennessee Williams, right? So this is how they can ask questions. They can also give you statements that I told you from plays like Glass Menagerie, right? So they keep on playing around with the text. These are basically all the texts that are important, and they are just right in front of you. You can take a screenshot. Also try to learn the dates here, right? So you don't have to ratify all of these things. You can sometimes relate things as well. But yes, there is few things that you have to cram up. Then you have Arthur Miller, someone who is very important in our American literature. And this is, again, I'm telling you, this is drama only, but there is the poetry section also in American literature. So we have Arthur Miller, and when it comes to Arthur Miller, all the texts are very important. I have seen that they keep on asking questions from The Death of a Salesman. They keep on asking questions from Crucible, And of course, All My Sons is also very important, and I want you to learn the dates as well, because again the chronology is very important. Then you have Eugene O'Neill, someone who is very, very important because he is the winner of Pulitzer Prize, and all the texts are very important. Now let us read here. So The Hairy Ape, that was written in 1922, The Fountain, and All God's Children Got Wings, Desire Under the Elms, and there are other plays also. And of course, for Strange Interlude, he got the Pulitzer Prize. And of course, there is The Long Day's Journey into the Night, that is written in 1944, first performed in 1956, and then there are the other plays as well. So he being a very, very important writer, The Morning Becomes Electra is a play they have also asked. So I have seen questions coming from Eugene O'Neill, and how do they ask questions from? They gave you Eugene O'Neill and you have to pick the text that is written by Eugene O'Neill, or they can ask you that yes, these are the dates, you have to match the following. Greater detail questions are not asked, a lot of questions are not asked from your American drama that is pertaining to the details. So when they are asking about detailed questions, they are going to ask you from the British literature, right? So Oscar Wilde is more important when it comes to asking deep questions, but they won't ask you deep questions from your American drama. Right, now we have Edward Albee, and the zoo story is important, Sandbox is important, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. They have asked these questions and these texts a lot of times. Then you have August Wilson, and August Wilson, the plays of August Wilson is also important. So there is the Pittsburgh Cycle, that these are the 10 plays that are collectively called as the Pittsburgh Cycle. There is the Piano Lesson. There is the Joe Turner's Come and Gone, and there are other plays also, and he becomes an important writer. Then we have Gertrude Stein, very, very important, 3 lives are written. Then there are White Wines, there is Tender Buttons. They have also asked even detailed questions from here, like what are the 3 sections that are under Tender Buttons. So you should know it is objects, it is food, and it is room. And when it was written in 1914. So you should learn all of these things. Now there is this autobiography of Alice B. Tolkien, that is important. There is Fernhurst, Curie, and other early writings are also there. Right? So you cannot leave these writers. Then we have the post-colonial drama. So in the post-colonial drama, what is post-colonial literature should be clear to you. So the post-colonial literature is the literature by the people who were formerly colonized by the different first of all colonized, right? So these are the different countries that were colonized. So this is the literature from those countries, and these are the few examples. Like we have Soyinka, he is from Nigeria, and he has written many more texts, but the strong breed becomes the most important. We have Amata Aidu, we have Derek Wolcott, we have Girish Karnad, we have Manjula Padmanathan. So these are the few texts, and have also given you the countries from where they come, like Trinidad, India, and the dates also. So you can read it, and in the classes we are going to read it in greater detail. So this is just a gist, this is just an example, right? Hevadna is very, very important, right? And then you have the European drama, and from where do we start with the European drama? So European drama is basically the starting of drama. It gives you the starting of drama, the ancient Greek period, about 600 BCE until the present age. They started with the drama. The Western theatrical tradition began in the ancient Greek, and this is how the word drama and theater came into being. So here you have to study in greater detail about Aeschylus, about Sophocles, about Euripides, and about the other writers also. So you should know that The Frogs is a play that was written in 405 BCE, and it was written by Aristophanes, right? So you should know. Then what is important here? You should know who has written Oedipus Rex. It is written by Sophocles. You should know about Medea. It is written by Euripides, Austria, and the Orestria trilogy. And they have asked a lot of times what are the 3 trilogies that come under the trilogy that is written by Aeschylus, right? So Austria trilogy becomes an important question from here. In fact, Oedipus Rex is very important. That is written by Sophocles. So Oedipus complex is something that we keep on studying and applying in all of the texts. So this is how it started. It originated from this text, right? So you should be Clear with this? Now, these are the three very important writers. There are the texts that are given here. You can again take a screenshot, and this is the trilogy that I was talking about. So, Agamemnon, the Liberation Bearers, and the Euripides is the three plays that fall under the section, or you can say the trilogy, that is the Orestria trilogy, that is written by Aeschylus. There are other plays also that I have given here. And then there is Sophocles, a very important writer again, and then there is Euripides. So you cannot leave them. Then you will of course study about the liturgical plays that I told you, the York mystery cycles. There is the mystery plays, the morality plays, Every Man being the very important play. Then of course we are going to divide them according to the different genre that we have done. So in British literature, we have all of these things. There are some other writers that are very important in European literature, like we have Goethe, that he has written Faust, and he has written so many other plays also. We have Victor Hugo, and then we have P.B. Shelley. Then we have Lord Byron, and then what do we have? We have Leo Tolstoy. We have Henry Ibsen, someone you cannot leave. A Dollhouse is very important, and they have also given statements from A Dollhouse also. Then you have Oscar Wilde, someone you cannot leave. They give detailed questions from the text of Oscar Wilde also, right? So then these are the few texts that you have to study again. There are texts like, as I told you, Pygmalion by J.B. Shaw. There is the plays like Waiting for Godot, something you cannot leave. Right? So these are the few plays that I wanted to talk about. Then comes the Indian literature. Now, Indian literature, as I told you, they focused a lot in the previous examination. Maybe they can focus, they can again ask a lot of questions from the Indian literature. So you have to be clear about it. Don't leave it. A lot of students actually leave it. You should know that there are some writers that played, some dramatists that played a very important role initially, and now there are some contemporary writers as well. So you should be very clear that there is Gurcharan Das, there is J.V. Desai, there is Pratap Sharma, there is Ashif Kimber, there is Karimboy, there is Naseem Ezekiel, G.V. Patel, there is Pratish Nandi, right? So these are the writers that made a very significant contribution in the history of the Indian English drama. And then there are some contemporary Indian drama holders also, right? So there is Badal Sarkar, there is Girish Karnad, there is Vijay Tendulkar. So these are some writers that are significant whenever we talk about drama, and you cannot leave all of these writers. There are few in poetry and in other sections also, as I have been telling you. Then comes the non-fictional prose. So in this non-fictional prose, you should be clear that there are a lot of things that can fall under non-fictional prose, and here smart work is important. How do you start approaching this? Study about the Bible. This time also they asked a question that which is this original text from where this Bible was taken, right? So something like this was asked. So anyway, you should be clear with the chronology of the Bible, how it was written, which was the first Bible, and of course the dates. Then you should know about the journals also. This time they are asking a lot of questions from journals. So you have Rambler, Tatler, Examiner, right? So chronological order के अंदर set करना आता है, and they also ask you questions. Who is the writer? Who is the one who started with this journal? There are some contemporary journals related to your research methodology also, journals related to your literary studies, right? So these are the few things that they keep on playing around, and they will ask you questions from these. So travel books, essays, and your opinion pieces and Bible is a few, are these few are the things that you just cannot leave. So you should know about different memoirs, different biographies as well. So these are the list. I just wanted to give you. This is not the complete list, again I'm saying, but they are important. We can discuss like Francis Bacon, and all of his essays become very important. You should know that he has given a lot of plays, and you should read those plays. Then you have John Milton. Not only study Paradise Lost, right? You have to study the non-fictional prose as well. You should be clear about Aeropagitica, why he has written Aeropagitica, what was the theme about it. He was writing for the press culture, right? So you should be clear what is the basic agenda of all of these essays that are there in front of you, and there are many more that we'll be studying in the class. So we have Swift, we have J.S. Mill, and he has written The Subjection of Women. Very, very important. We have John Ruskin. He has written up to this last. Then there are other plays also. This time they ask questions from Thomas Cyril. They ask about hero and hero worships, and there are other plays also, some other essays also. So you have to pick that which all are the plays that are written by your Thomas Cyril. Then there are some other plays also, as it is written in front of you, right? There are, okay, this is a slide as well. So you have plays like hero and hero worship, you have plays, and Lord Macaulay being also very important. They ask questions from Lord Macaulay also. Now these are the few plays. Now this time Anatomy of Melancholy was also a text from where they ask questions from, right? So they keep on asking questions from these texts also. But why is this section doable again? Because of course you have to read the text once, and then you will be, it would be easy for you to remember all of these things. So you should know that the non-fictional prose like Utopia are, all of these things are very important. Then comes the ELT section, as I was telling you. Now this is a section that is very scoring, and you must have already done all of these things. And if you just give 1 or 2 days for these topics, then it would be very clear to you, right? So we'll be studying about Noam Chomsky, we'll be studying about Jean Piaget, we'll be studying about Lev Zavorsky, we'll be studying about the second language acquisition theory that is given by Stephen Croshaw. Then we'll be studying about the different teaching methods, how English is being taught. We'll study about the direct method, the grammar translation method, audiolingual, structural, the physical response, the communicative teaching. Then we'll study about the silent way, the natural approach, the lexical, and the suggestopedia. We'll also study about Creole, Pidgin, registers, and all of these things that also comes under your linguistic section, right? So all of these things are very important and very easy. There are also few writers that have written about all of these methods, and sometimes the writer is also asked. So we can easily manage all of these things. Now, cultural studies is a very, very vast domain, but comparatively in the exam it is still doable because there are few writers. If you do those writers, it would be manageable. So if they're asking about 10 questions from literary criticism, cultural studies and theories, or say 15 questions, you should at least be clear and you should answer 12 questions correctly, right? So what all are the things that you should know here? You should be very clear what is your cultural studies, what is the basic understanding, evolution of cultural studies, how you see that cultural studies can be read with, in comparison with the other theories that we have. So we have structuralism, Marxism, and post-structuralism, and with the different theories, you can see how the culture is changing, right? So this is something very clear. There are some important key concepts that if you focus in the cultural studies and while you are reading the text, the things would be very clear. Like they will talk about subjectivity, they'll talk about identity, ideology, representation, power, discourse, and they'll talk about gender. They'll talk about body, time, space, ethnicity, race, biology, globalization, consumption. These are the few things that all of the writers are talking about. They'll talk about media, television, new media, technology, and they'll talk about the cultural industry. So whenever we talk about your cultural studies, it is not only the hot culture, the cold culture, it is not only your contemporary culture that they're talking about. It is basically the evolution of culture. They're not only talking about the pop culture, but how the different culture, the whole together culture is changing, and how literature is affecting it, and how literature is affected by it, right? So there are few writers that you should do. There is cyber culture also that they ask questions from, cultural policy. They also critique cultural studies also. So there are some theorists that critique cultural studies. So you should study Stuart Hall, right? Richard Hogarth, William and Raymond Williams, so and Marshall McLuhan. These are the few that you just cannot leave. Then of course there are other theorists also like E.P. Thompson's, and this is also a text that they keep on asking in the exam. So who has written The Making of the English Working Class? So this is a text that is written by E.P. Thompson. So in my class we'll be studying about each of the writer and the texts that are written. So they ask questions that you have to set the text in the chronological order. They ask you about who started cultural studies, they ask you about the different conferences, they ask you about the different journals that are related to cultural studies. So there are other, of course, authors also, and you just cannot leave them. But the most important one, you can easily count them on your fingertips. They are basically E.P. Thompson, Marshall McLuhan, Raymond Williams, Stuart Hall, Richard Hogarth, right? So you should be clear with all of these things. Then comes literary criticism. As I told you, study literary criticism according to the different periods, according to the different ages. Now, this is not the full list, but these are the basic texts that you have to do. So there is the medieval period first. So in the medieval period, you have to study about Plato and the Republic being the most important text that you cannot leave. Then you have Aristotle. Poetics is very important here. You have Horace, the art of poetry. You have Longinus, who talks about the sublime. The 5 categories, the 5 ways how the sublime is achieved, and all of these things should be clear to you. Then comes the Renaissance, and in this Renaissance, you will be studying about Philip Sidney, and here Francis Bacon becomes also important. So the Apology for Poetry is a text you have to study in greater detail. Not all the texts you have to study in detail. Few texts should be studied in greater detail, like Republic, Poetics, Art of Poetry, and on Sublime. These are the one-go reading texts, but your Republic and Poetics should be read in greater detail. And an apology for poetry is very, very important, the advancement of learning. Then comes your neoclassical age, and in this age we have Dryden. You cannot leave Dryden, you cannot leave the essays that are written by Dryden and Pope as well. So I want you to study these 2 texts in greater detail, and it is time consuming, but you have to do. Then of course we have the very, very important and the most important person of UGC NET. They will ask you questions from Samuel Johnson. Preface to Shakespeare is very, very important. You have other texts like Rasselas and On Fiction also. You have Immanuel Kant after that. Then comes the Romantic period, and in the Romantic period we have William Wordsworth. There is Preface to Lyrical Ballads and Lyrical Ballads. They'll ask you questions like in which year Preface was added, right? So in which year second edition came? This type of questions is also asked, right? Then comes your Coleridge, and Biographia Literaria is something you have to read in greater detail. They'll ask you about the distinction between the fancy and what do you mean by fancy, what is imagination, what is secondary imagination, what is your first-hand imagination. All of these things are important. Then Thomas Love Peacock, the 4 ages. He talked about the brass age, the gold age, the iron age, and this is very important. Then comes P.B. Shelley, one text you again have to do in greater detail. That is the defense of poetry. Then you have the 19th century, and in 19th century, this is basically an age where contemporary criticism and theories came into being. Here you have Umberto Eco, very, very important. You have Gramsci, and Prison Notes is there. You have A.C. Bradley, very, very important. Sigmund Freud, someone you cannot leave. There is Cicero, there is your Claude Lévi-Strauss, and many more to go, right? So you cannot leave the things here, right? So this is what I had for today's video. I hope I did. Of course, no one can give you the complete detailed syllabus in just one go, but in the classes we'll be studying in greater detail. We'll be decoding things just how I decoded the drama section. We'll be decoding the poetry, the fiction, and the non-fiction section also in the categories that I told you, and then we'll be coming at this section because that is easy. So what you have to do, about 3 months you have for the next examination, and you know that whatever sources that you are getting, you just cannot study from those sources. You have to choose the best sources so that you don't confuse yourself, right? So a good strategical way of studying will help you here. Don't confuse yourself, use your brain, try to move age-wise in a chronological order. The things would be very clear and you would be easily able to clear the examination, right? So I hope you like the video. If you have any doubts, you can write it in the comment section. I'll surely reply to you. Thank you.